old Europe was conquered by a warlike people who we call today the Yamnaya. Okay? So 3 questions I want to answer in today's class is, first of all, who are the Yamnaya? Second question is, where do they come from? And the third question is, how did they conquer Europe? Okay? All right. So after the Ice Age, which ended about 12,000 years ago, the climate became warmer, and the Near East became the area where you could grow crops the easiest. Okay? So the Near East is what we call the Middle East today, which includes Turkey, Jordan, Syria, and Israel. That's where farming was invented. About 7,000, 8,000 years ago, the weather became a lot cooler. Okay? There was another ice age for a very short amount of time, and this forced people to start to immigrate or migrate to look for new lands. Okay? So people in the Near East, they went off to Europe, and these people were very lucky because the geography of Europe was not that different from the geography of the Near East. So they could take their religion, they could take their technology, move over to Europe, and still be about the same, okay? There were some minor changes, but they were more or less the same, okay? So these people were very lucky. And these people, they worship the mother goddess who gives life to everything, okay? They believed in the ideas of unity. Unity just means that we are the same, okay? Every one of us are the same. We have a responsibility to love each other and to love each other's children. We're the same as animals. We're the same as plants, okay? So we must do our best to protect nature. So we also believe in balance and harmony. And this is the religion, as we discussed before, of many indigenous peoples around the world. If you go to Africa, Australia, the Amazon, and you meet these indigenous peoples, they have the same religion, which is we come from a mother goddess, and we have a responsibility to protect the nature, the earth, because that's the gift from the mother goddess. And everyone has a soul. So after we die, our soul still lives on. Okay? Does that make sense, guys? So this is the religion of old Europe. And because of this religion, they were egalitarian, meaning there was no real difference between men and women. In fact, because women had the power to give birth, to give life, they were considered in many ways superior to men. And the political class was mainly governed by women, okay? The problem starts when these people went off to what we call the steppes. And the steppes is a huge ocean of grassland that it basically extends from Europe into Mongolia, okay? And you know, the Chinese word for this is Taoyuan. Now the problem with the grassland is people can't eat grass. And you cannot grow crops on grassland that easily, okay? So the people on the steppes, they struggle to survive. So let's now discuss the innovations that these people created, okay? And the innovations were pretty incredible because they forever transformed human history. Okay, so the first innovation they adopted was a pastoral economy, okay? A pastoral economy, basically raising cattle, raising or herding cattle, or cows. All right, so we cannot eat grass, okay? But cows and sheep and goats can eat grass, and then we can eat the cows, the goats, and the sheep, okay? Does that make sense? So what these people realize is they can take the cows, the goats, and the sheep from the farmers, okay, because there's a lot of trading back then, and then raise them in the steppes, and because there's so much grass, they'll grow very fast, and then you can use that as the source of your food, okay? So they created a new economy. what the second innovation is, what then they realize is, you know what, we can also drink their milk, okay? Dairy. And this is important because for most of human history, we cannot drink milk because we're lactose intolerant, okay? In fact, most people in the world today are still lactose intolerant. But they developed the enzymes, the peptides, in order to drink milk, okay? They became lactose tolerant. So that's their second big innovation, the ability to drink milk, okay? And now, if you're able to eat protein and you drink milk a lot, what happens to your body? What happens to your body? Exactly, okay? You become very tall, very strong, okay? So, because of these two innovations, the people in the steppes were on average, okay, just average, 20 centimeters taller than the farmers in the Near East and in Europe. 20 centimeters is a lot, guys. Okay? The reason why is the farmers did not eat meat mostly, and they could not drink milk. They ate vegetables. Okay? So the third big innovation is the domestication of the horse. The reason why is the grassland is huge, and they needed to travel huge distances to trade, to communicate. Okay? So they started to domesticate the horse. And it's very hard to domesticate the horse because horses are trained, or horses are programmed, hardwired to run away from humans, right? If they see a threat, they run away. So this process, we believe, took at least 3,000 years. Okay? But they kept on trying because the ability to ride horses was very important for their society and their economy. And so now they have the ability to ride horses. That's the third big innovation. Then they invent the wheel. Okay? And why this is important is if you have the horse and the wheel, you can create the wagon. Okay? If you have the wagon, it means you are no longer stuck in one place. You can move from place to place. And so this is what we call the nomadic pastoral economy. Okay? Does that make sense? They're able to move from place to place because basically what happens is you have a lot of cows, they're going to eat all the grass. Okay? Now you have to move somewhere else for them to eat the grass. Okay? Does that make sense? Now, the problem with this is what? If you move from place to place and the cows are eating all the grass, what happens? Usually. Conflict, right? Because you are now in competition for what we call grazing rights. Grazing rights. If your cows go into a grassland and they eat all that grass, well, that's preventing other people from going in and having their cows eat that grass, okay? So now they're fighting over land and grazing rights, okay? What else are they now going to fight over? How about cows, right? Because in this economy, one way to survive is to feed your cows. What's another way to survive? What else can you do in this economy, in this world? Steal other people's cows, right? Does it make sense? Okay. So the protection of the cows meant there was a greater emphasis on men, okay? So remember, in this society, in the Near East, in Europe, these are agricultural societies. And for them, what mattered was life-giving, giving birth, and maintaining a harmonious society. So women were more important. But in this society, where there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of conflict, men became more important, okay? So with these innovations, they start to change their economy, their society, and their religion. Okay, economy, society, and religion. Okay, so in terms of the economy, the first major change from this society is the idea of private property. Private property, okay? Because cows are private wealth, and you have to protect that wealth. Okay? So that's the first major innovation, the idea of private property where this belongs to you and only you, and not to society or to the mother goddess, okay? And that's very different from the farmers in Europe who had no concept of private property. From the idea of private property, the society changes and becomes a patriarchy, okay, where men are in control, okay? And in a patriarchy of private property, the problem now is one of inheritance, right? So let's just say I have 10 sons and I have 100 cattle, and I die. Who gets my cattle? Who gets my wealth?
The older son.
It has to be the older son. Why? The eldest son. Why? We need 100 cattle to survive as a family. If I start splitting the wealth up between the 10 sons, we become a lot poorer, right? The 10 sons have 10 sons, then by the third generation, everyone has one cattle. So everyone's now poor, okay? So the only way to solve this problem is if I, the patriarch, the father, give everything to the eldest son, okay? And this is what we call primogeniture. So this is a new innovation, primogeniture, where the eldest inherits everything, okay? Now the problem is, what happens to the other 9 sons?
Well, they have to find their own wealth.
Exactly, okay? So the eldest son gets everything, and the 9 other sons, too bad. You have to go build your own wealth. And that means basically stealing cows from other people, okay? So this creates a war culture. A war culture. So if you're making these changes, you now have to change the religion, okay? The religion. So their religion makes major changes to the mother goddess religion, okay? So the first major change is who's now God? Who do they now worship? A man, right? Because men fight wars. So they worship someone called the Sky Father. And he's the source of who the Greeks call Zeus, the thunder god, okay? And who the Romans call Jupiter, also the thunder god. So the first god is called the Sky Father, okay? That's the first change. The second change is, whereas the mother goddess gave us everything, right? Nature. The Sky Father gave us cows, cattle, money, and wealth, okay? So the third change is, whereas the mother goddess asks us to love everything and protect everything, the Sky Father asks us to fight each other for the right to have wealth. Does it make sense? That's now their new religion. Okay? And so they adopt this new religion. Okay, so these are all major innovations, okay? And again, the one group who comes in adopts all these innovations are called the Yamnaya. And so if you're a group and you adopt most of these innovations, but not all these innovations, then you're going to lose to the group called the Yamnaya who adopt all the innovations, okay? Does that make sense to you guys? Okay? And so this is a people who are obsessed with collecting wealth and fighting wars and expanding into new territories. And so what happens is, over a process of a few thousand years, they conquer the steppes, okay? Their culture spreads throughout the steppes. It doesn't mean they're one people. It means they're one culture, practice the same beliefs, okay? Does it make sense? Any questions so far? So these are the Yamnaya people. This is what they believe. This is where they came from. This is how they behave.